me, the harvest of the crop is the start of the following crop, the successful start of a following crop. So it's really important for me as an agronomist to make sure that residue at harvest time is spread as uniformly as possible. And that obviously begins with a well-designed and well-adjusted straw chopper. And there's lots of topics we could spin off into, and I'm just going to make sure I cover the basics here because of time limitations. But the first thing I want to stress, as much as anything, you need to understand how wide realistically your straw chopper can spread in most conditions. For example, this chopper on this Lexion 570 does a good job spreading 30, 32 feet, somewhere in that region in most conditions. This combine has a 35-foot head, and we can adjust it a little bit, but really 32 is about as wide as it spreads in most conditions, including the wheat field that we're in now. So if it only spreads 32 feet, there's no good putting a 40-foot head on the front, because you're going to have strips on both sides of the header with no residue distributed over. So make sure you start by understanding the physical limitations, the design limitations of the straw chopper, find out how wide the chopper spreads, because there's no point selecting a header wider than the spreader can spread, because if you don't spread residue evenly across the harvest width of the combine, you're going to have problems down the road, especially in a no-till system. For example, if you've got heavy areas of residue in the middle of the combine, not much on the outside, we often see what we call differential emergence of following crops. Where you got lots of residue, it cools the soil, the crop emerges later. Where you got minimal to no residue, you generally get fast emergence because the soils are warmer. Where you got heavy residue, you often see lots of hairpinning. Where you've got no residue, again, the crop comes out of the ground faster. So it's really important that you spread residue evenly and as uniformly as possible at harvest time. The other important topic is chop length, okay? For example, some of these pieces of straw that have been through the chopper are 6 inches long, perhaps chopped decent. There's other smaller fines. So there's a lot of things that influence this, but basically the standard of the straw chopper knives and the number of knives and the rotational speed of the chopper are all primary variables to influence chop length. So starting out, it's really important that you have good quality and sharp stationary knives. So this is a stationary knife out of this particular chopper. Carbide tipped, reversible blades, good edge. We changed the knives, the stationary knives in this chopper yesterday. They were really dull. And there's even some people in Germany that suggest you need to change or rotate the stationary knives about every 2 days. And that's hard to imagine because the knives are not cheap. Depending on where you buy them from, they're $25 or $30 a piece generally. So they're not a cheap investment. But the guys in Germany suggest that the additional power consumption because of dull blades will pay for a set of blades every 2 days. Well, not the blades, but to turn them every two days. It's not hard to change the blades. We turned them the other day. There's 2 bolts on either side. You basically retract the stationary knife bar. You pull out the rod through the center. Basically insert every knife, push the rod back in, put the bolts back in. 2 guys, 15-20 minutes can replace a full set of stationary knives on this combine. Or they can turn them in that same amount of time. It's not a bad job at all, okay? So make sure your knives are in good condition, the stationary knives. The number of knives across the knife bar is obviously a factor too. This chopper only has 25 stationary knives. Other combines on the market have 45, 50, 54, or sometimes more. So the more knives you have, the finer the chop. But the more knives you have, the more power is consumed, obviously, by the chopper. But at least if you have lots of knives, they don't have to be fully engaged. For example, if you don't want fine chop, you can retract the blades halfway, and that will increase the length of the material that goes through the chopper. So lots of variables, but the bottom line is check for grain losses, get it as low as possible, do as good of a job as you can adjusting the straw chopper at harvest time. There's some other adjustments I didn't mention. You can adjust the vanes obviously in and out. You can obviously adjust the tailboard up and down. These are some things that you can check with your manufacturer and look at the chopper itself. But these are most of the things that you need to be aware of at harvest time to get the best out of the straw chopper and to get your losses down to an acceptable level.